Hi, this is Dr. Walker, and welcome back to the channel, Denwalker.com. I'm going to talk a little today about mRNA, the jab, and how they could pose a problem for us long term. So I had a question a few weeks ago, and I answered the question, but I thought I'd continue doing some more digging. And the question was about why is it that my antibody levels for the COVID-19 vaccine kept going up? And why then am I getting a second, a third, and a fourth, whatever number jab that we're on now? So that was the gist of the question. And so I did answer the question, but looked into it a little bit more. So mRNA by itself is a warning for the cell to say there is something going on, something wrong. The nucleus sort of triggers that whole thing. And then an mRNA strand is created to create a protein that the protein can then be on its cell surface to be able to use that as a trigger to have antibodies created against the offending agent. What I'd forgotten, though, was the fact that mRNA is only in the cytoplasm, so outside of the nucleus, but inside the cell wall, within the cell membrane. It's only in the system for just a short time. Some people would say a few hours, some people would say up to 24 hours, thereabouts. But then it's dissolved back into the amino acid component, so it can then be used for other things. So it's a trigger. Once the trigger is done, the offending agent has been captured or killed, essentially, that mRNA strand breaks down, it kind of goes away. That's it. Because if it doesn't go away, if it doesn't break down, then it's serially triggering the system to create more protein to the cell surface, more antibodies, and so forth, so on. So it goes away in a short time. Now, the mRNA vaccines are sort of inside a nanoparticle. The nanoparticle then attaches itself to the cell surface, and then it sort of releases its component, it's the mRNA particle, essentially, inside the cell. And again, some question about what actually happens to the nanoparticle, what happens with serial sort of injections from that, how it gets dissolved. And again, that part of it I don't know fully understand yet. But inside the cytoplasm now is this mRNA particle. Now think about it for a second. If it's not supposed to be there in the cytoplasm, it gets dissolved, it gets broken down, it gets taken away, it's broken down. So they have to make it in such a way that it's durable, right? It lasts some time. The question then becomes, how long does it last? Now, if you listen to Dr. Peter McCauley, and hopefully I'll attach the article that I just read at the bottom of this video, there's discussion that particle is inside the cytoplasm for upwards of a year. Durable, long-lasting in the cytoplasm for upwards of a year. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean to me and you? It means that as long as that message is still in the cytoplasm, it tells the body that the offending agent is still there. The offending agent still needs to be quieted. The offending agent is still causing a problem. So then what your body does is it continues then to attach its ribosome and then create that protein onto the cell surface. And again, the more it creates, the more antibodies you have. Right? You're having antibodies created for something that may not be necessary, right? That's what's happening. So remember now for a second that the vaccine that we have, the mRNA vaccines that we have, are created against the Wuhan version of COVID-19 from 2019. That's the offending agent we're trying to fight. So in other words, when it's creating a protein for the spike of the Wuhan virus from 2019. Now, that spike portion of COVID-19 has changed drastically from the 2019 version to the current version. So, the Omicron version, from what I understand, has essentially 32 plus changes along the spike protein and like 11 changes along the receptor domain or the receptor binding domain. So it's really a drastically different animal than before. So it's almost like taking a flu vaccine from 2019 and injecting it in people now, except the flu vaccine doesn't have the long-term consequence that I'm talking about. So in other words, it doesn't have the mRNA strand in the cytoplasm for this long, right? But it's sort of the same thing, right? You wouldn't do that. You would not give a vaccine from 2019 to the current issue, the current flu season. You would not do that. Same thing with the COVID-19 quote vaccine from 2019. We shouldn't, it shouldn't be, it's not the same thing, right? The Omicron is a whole lot different than COVID-19. It's a whole lot different thing. So now you're injecting the same particle in the person's body. So you're creating the protein again, you're creating the antibodies in excess. And like the body does with anything that does not belong in the blood. So the body sees sort of all foreign entities inside the blood as essentially foreign if it's not supposed to be there. So what does it do? It quickly tries to wall it off. It tries to shut it down because it knows that if left if left alone in the cytoplasm, in the blood, it goes anywhere. It goes to the brain, it goes to the legs, it goes anywhere it wants to, and in fact, will at some point lodge in possibly a small, tiny vessel or capillary, right? So it tries to wall it off. And how does it wall it off? How does it wall things off typically? Sometimes it'll create a clot around it, which is the reason that people always said that the spike protein is very thrombogenic. So in other words, it creates clots because it's excessive in the blood, and that excess in the blood, the body sees as a foreign thing, and so it tries to wall it off. And walling it off means that it's going to put create a clot, if you would, to try to stop it. But the problem with that is it goes downstream into the smallest vessels, and that could be in your brain. That's a stroke. In your heart, that's a heart attack. That's in your leg. It's a thrombus. It's a clot. Any of those things can happen, right? So again, we're taking a shot that was designed for COVID-19. We're taking it now against Omicron. But again, now knowing that there's all of these unanswered questions in terms of what happens with the 4th, 5th, 6th shot in terms of nanoparticles, and we now know, at least along this article, that I'm talking about, 1 and 2 from Dr. McCauley, who says that these strands are in the cytoplasm upwards of a year. It's like, and I think Bill Gates sort of mentioned it before, so it's like having your own little factory inside your body. The question then becomes, though, is it a factory you want in your body? Is it something that you want to keep creating in your own body, creating proteins to create antibodies against a virus that is really now different, much different than it was when the vaccine was created? Omicron is a whole lot different now than when the initial virus came along. Is that something you want to have in your body, in your system? Anyway, thanks for listening, Dr. Walker.